Welcome to the Lead Goose Podcast, Navigating Leadership in the Philippines. I'm Auie Macapaz, your host, and I am thrilled to have you join us in this exciting journey into the world of leadership. Joining me are two amazing co-hosts, Richard Caballero, our lead goose and a Filipino-Canadian global leader, and Ripp Rivera, a seasoned leader in a top multinational company. Together, we're on a mission to transition Filipino leaders' crab mentality to geese mentality. In this podcast series, we bring you inspiring stories and practical advice from leaders across various industries in the Philippines. We will dive into the journeys, explore their challenges, and uncover their strategies for successful leadership, all within our country's unique socio-economic and cultural context. Each episode is packed with actionable takeaways and personal leadership journey of our leaders that would resonate both with aspiring and experienced leaders. We have a fantastic lineup of guests, including founders, CEOs, government officials, social enterprise leaders, and industry experts who are ready to share their insights and experiences with us. So sit back, relax, and get ready to be inspired. Let's dive into the Lead Goose podcast. Welcome to the Geese Project Leadership Program podcast, where we explore the frontiers of innovation and leadership. In this episode titled Innovation and Leadership Driving Change in a Fast-Paced World, we delve into the dynamic world of digital transformation and the leaders who make it happen. Our esteemed guest today is none other than DICT Undersecretary Jocelle Batapa-Sigue. With an impressive background in ICT development and a passionate advocate for innovation, Jocelle has been a driving force behind numerous initiatives that have propelled the Philippines into the digital age. As Undersecretary for ICT Industry Development, she has championed policies and projects that foster technological growth and digital inclusion. Join us as we unpack Jocelle's remarkable journey, her insights on leading in a fast-paced environment, and her vision for the future ICT in the Philippines. This is an episode you won't want to miss, filled with inspiration, actionable advice, and a glimpse into the future of innovation. Stay tuned and be inspired. We will start with the leadership stories, including the challenges and solutions that USEC Jocelle found. We will wrap up with a fun rapid-fire segment and key takeaways. So, tara! Let's dive into today's episode and hear from our guest and co-hosts. Welcome, USEC Jocelle. It's a pleasure to have you in the podcast. So let's start by talking about how you foster a culture of innovation in your organization.
Thank you, Awi, and hello to Richard and Rip, and hello to all your viewers. It's my pleasure to join you in this podcast. And yes, first of all, I'm grateful that you are giving me this opportunity to share my leadership journey, which is already quite a long period of time. My current position in the government is an undersecretary at the Department of Information and Communications Technology, or our DICT. This is our digital ministry in the Philippines. But I'm in this capacity for already 2 years. But my lens as a leader, I think, started ever since my basic education. Even in my grade school years, I've always been president of the classroom or a student leader. So I think leadership is my second skin, and I'm always inspired to also share this journey with other co-leaders. Over the past 30 years or so, my inclination is always to work with other leaders, other people with the same mindset to pioneer, to transform, to innovate, and to change things. So my journey I believe, started in grade school. I remember I was 6 years old at the time, and my teacher gave me the stick. Remember, during our time, normally our teachers would have a long stick. Of course, you know why they have it. They use it to they use it to point something in the blackboard. They also use it to,
Sabi ni
you know,
sabi nila 'yon.
yeah. So at 6 years old, I was just, surprised that my teacher gave me the stick. And to me, that was very symbolic. And I always share this story every time I'm asked to talk about my leadership journey. To a 6 year old, it's really something that's very meaningful and inspiring. And to a certain extent, probably you can say traumatic because
Mm.
you're among 6 years old classmates. Some are even seven. They're older than me. So I
Yeah.
entered school at a very young age. I had some challenges. My parents had some challenges trying to fight out that I be admitted because my birthday is December. So normally
Oh,
you need
yeah.
to be 7 years old
Right.
to enter grade one. But I will be 7 years old in that year, but only maybe but basically in December. So so I was a 6 year old among 7 year old kids. But I hold the stick. And so that was my first symbol of leadership. I was asked by my teacher to ensure that I keep the discipline and order inside the classroom. I was asked by my teacher to teach my own classmates using the stick, stand in front of the blackboard and weld the stick. And at some point in time, I was even asked by my teacher to punish my classmates if they're not following instructions. So that's the beginning of my leadership journey. I mean, I don't know if you can call it child abuse on the part of the teacher, but I think it's actually my destiny to hold the stick at a very young age. So today, several decades later, I am a leader that feels the responsibility to keep things in order, at least in my sphere of influence, to ensure that the people around me are aligned under one important mission, and to ensure that everyone grows and develops their journey as well as leaders. So in a way, as a leader, I am somehow a teacher, I am somehow a regulator, and I am somebody who would like to inspire the whole classroom and the whole brood in order to achieve the mission.
So yeah, that reminds me of a book I read many years ago, about 2 decades ago, The Way of the Shepherd. Na meron yung stick nga naman 'no, you use it for many different things. As you said, Yusek, kung puwedeng nagtuturo ka, puwede ka ring nagre-redirect ng mga tao, and in your case at that time, mga bata. And now, you are using the stick to make sure that things are in order and that things actually get done. Richard, any, thoughts on that, or Rip?
Yeah, so it reminds me. You think Giselle brought me back to my young days when growing up. You know how your parents, there's only one thing that they want you to do after school, right? Play the piano. They always tell you, okay, go to a piano lesson. And so I'm looking back, that jogged my memory that one of the reasons why I stopped playing piano is, in relation to the stick, is that when you make a mistake, what does the teacher tell you? They go like this, diba? And of course, the intent is trying to make sure that you don't make the same mistake. But I think one of the reasons why at some point I ended up going like this to the teacher as well, or because I got upset. And so looking
Mm.
back, I think that's a good sign that you're going to be a good leader. Because if you kind of not just take that stuff and then say, hey, why am I
Yeah.
being punished for this, right? And respond accordingly. I think looking back, I think that's a good indication that you can think for yourself, and that you're not just a follower, and you're just not really just adapting to this stuff. So that's a really good story because I forgot about that story already when I was young. And after that, I never played piano for the rest of my life. So, so thank you for jogging that. Rip,
Thank you, Yusek Giselle. Thank you for sharing your wonderful stories. Good morning, Richard. Good morning,
good
everyone.
morning.
Yeah, so when I was listening to Yusek Josel, when she was introducing her position and her career, I actually just caught the word digital ministry. So I was just wondering the word ministry, how did that come about with what you are doing now? I mean, I was just curious. That's one of the things that came out.
Yes, so normally my portfolio since August 2022, when I was appointed by Secretary Ivan John Uy, would also involve international engagements. So normally, globally, in other countries, they call their own departments as ministries, and they call their own secretaries as minister, and undersecretary would usually be deputy ministers. So I just mentioned digital ministry as an equivalent of the Department of Information and Communication Technology, in case we have listeners coming from different countries.
Oh,
So,
okay.
so the digital ministry is the term that I use to also mean the DIT, or the Department of Information and Communications Technology, which is, by the way, also practically a lifelong mission for me, because I was there together with Secretary Ivan and other prime movers right at the very start when we were all pushing for the creation of this department. The DICT is actually quite a new department, unlike other departments where we are actually taught to memorize in grade school. But the DICT was actually just created 8 years ago. Um, but we started to lobby for this department 20 plus years or so. So it means that policy making in the Philippines is quite very slow. And if I may just add, Richard, you
Yep.
actually also jogged my memory when you said piano. I actually think we belong in the same generation, because that was like the piano period.
Yeah, yeah,
I belong to a middle class family, but normally, even middle class would always want their kids to have some sort of knowledge in playing musical instruments. So I was also asked by my mother at the time. Well, another part of my story is I lost my mother when I was 9 years old. So I kind of become a mother to four other siblings at the age of 9. So I think that also made me a leader in the family. But when she was first grade, she also asked me to play the piano. And of course, it did not work well. I don't have any musical, DNA in me. So when the recital came, I was not really very prepared. So every one of my classmates were ready to play their piece. So I went up to the piano teacher and said, ma'am, what are you doing? She said, I'm preparing the program, the printed program for the piano recital. I said, why don't I make you a deal? Please remove my name in the piano recital, because I am sure I would not be able to play my piece without forgetting a lot of notes. And I prepared the program for you. And she looked at me and said, how is that possible? I said, I will take a picture of myself playing the piano, and I will draw myself. And that could be the cover of the program. I was handling that.
Talk
And
about
so
innovation, huh? Talk
Yeah,
about
I know,
innovation.
right?
Yeah, and so I ended up being the artist at 6 years old of the cover of the piano program without me as part of the recital. And so my mother said, what did you do? I said, Mom, I realized I'm not a pianist. I'm actually an artist. So that also started my creative journey. Until today, I would create a lot of artworks, digital, and also pencil, acrylic, painting. So I have my right brain just functioning from time
Just
to time.
as, yeah, just as active. I'm very curious, Yusek. Kasi whenever we talk about innovation, especially in this day and age, laging kakabit, no? There's always the aspect of technology. Is it right to assume that having a culture of innovation, is it too hard a task in the DICT, or iba pa din, there's still need you still need to be intentional as a leader to promote the culture of innovation in the DICT?
My reflection actually, and patong-patong na kasi ang lenses ko as a student leader, as a politician, as
Mm.
a lawyer, as a professor, as an environmentalist. So, um, I believe that innovation is a very, very tough word to define in so far as Philippine setting is concerned. Why? Because we Filipinos tend to normally take words very lightly. We say words oftentimes that we don't even mean.
Mm.
Yon, di ba? And we most of the time like over exaggerate, or probably we can just not find the right word.
Hmm.
So today, wherever you go, you will always hear people, oh, this is innovation. This is innovation. We are innovating. We are innovators. So very light na yung treatment of the word innovation. And in my case, I take it very seriously. Anything
Mhm.
that you're not doing differently, or you're not employing something new, I don't call it innovation. I just call it a normal process. Innovation from the word innovare is really doing something differently, something new. So when you do something new, you need to adopt new tools. And
Mhm.
mostly, when you talk of tools, the new tools would always be digital tools or some form of technology. And many
Mhm.
forms of technology are not digital. There are actually technologies that are mechanical, that are analog, and these are still technologies. But today, when you say innovation, it has to involve some sort of technology. But for me, innovation does not stop with the use of just a new form of technology. It must solve the use case of the or the problem that you are trying to innovate. So now
Mhm.
we talk about outcome. If your technology does not solve a problem, if you want things to get done in 24 hours rather than 24 days, and you put in technology and still you get things done in 24 days, I don't want to call it innovation. It's just a simple use of technology. So the end
Mhm.
goal of innovation is really trying to change things, the way you work, how you do things. So simply put, I define innovation as not what we do, but as how we do things. So innovation lies in how we do things.
Mhm.
Innovation does not lie in the fact that we're doing complex things. Even simple things can be innovative. And even complex things may not see the light of day in terms of innovation because it's just complex, but there's no innovation involved. I hope I make sense.
Yeah, yeah, I know that's amazing. And I have another question. Rip, let me know whether you want to interject, but I have a question. So one of the things that we found, because innovation is one of the core 12 traits that we found leaders need to have, right? And in the Philippines, what we found was a lot of this tendency to innovate really has a root cause that it's cultural based, in terms of how we were brought up, our stories about when we were a child. I mean, that affects our ability to innovate. So if you come from an environment where you're not allowed to take risks, you're afraid to suffer the consequences, you're not encouraged, whether it be your parenting style that you grew up with, whether the school system. And so we found is there is a generation of Filipinos that is really afraid to take risk, and in the process afraid to think out of the box, but more importantly, to think of what could be. And so innovation for us, what we found is more of a mentality, right? It's an approach. It's how you do things as opposed to something physical. Why do we have to do it this way? Why can't we do it this way? And that questioning aspect is sometimes where we find Filipino leaders are challenged. They don't question things. They tend to accept status quo because they tend to just they grew up in saying, wag mo nang ano yan, tumahimik ka na lang. The tall poppy syndrome. Somebody sticks out and kind of raises their hand, they get, ikaw na pinakamatalino. Sige, wag na. So how do you kind of handle that? I'm sure you're faced that day to day. You're going across the nation. You're meeting leaders, and I'm sure you're getting this mentality. How do you manage and handle that, Yusek?
Yeah. So really, very good insights, and I totally agree with you. Lot of our leadership abilities and our level of innovation is impacted by our culture as Filipinos. I totally agree with that. But I think if we take a step back, prior to discussing innovation, based on the story I shared at the beginning of this podcast, there are other important words that need to be aligned with innovation and the coming about of innovation. I think first is responsibility. Based on my story earlier, I realized that my leadership journey really began when I was given that stick. And that stick is a symbol of responsibility. You look around you in a classroom of, say, 40 young kids, and you realize you're the only one holding the stick. But the stick symbolizes the survival of the whole class. So you need to realize that you're the one responsible. And I think that, if we have interventions, and this is also a eureka moment for me discussing with all of you, I think the most important thing is to give young Filipinos, even at a very young age, a responsibility. And I appreciate my generation for that because we are given a lot of responsibilities in our generation. Like in a family of, say, five siblings, everyone will get a role. You wash the dishes, you clean the living room, you sweep the floor, and all these responsibilities redound to the whole family's welfare, not only you. So I think it is important that we all understand the term responsibility, that we are responsible for something, not only for ourselves, but for others. The next is risk. I like how you said risk. What is risk? Risk is really the eventuality of a reward or a punishment, right? When you risk something, you gain something. I mean, if you don't gain anything, I don't think there's a risk, you know? So you need to understand what is reward and what is punishment. And I think it's important for us Filipinos to understand the degree of the reward and of the punishment. So as a young kid, I was always conscious of the punishment. I was always conscious of that. Like I always tell myself, okay, what's the worst that can happen to me? So papaluin ako. So
Mm.
kung papaluin ako, maghihilom naman yung sugat eh. Kahit anong sakit ng palo. But if I don't risk and achieve this, I will forever be a loser. I would not know if I can achieve it. So I would rather risk and be punished or be rewarded if I make good rather than not do anything at all. So it's important, I think, for Filipinos to understand that risk has consequences. And not all consequences are bad. Depende yan. Depende yan sa amount of preparation mo. And the third word that I'd like to share, and this is now in answer to the question, Richard, I think innovation and even leadership has something to do with systems. Kasi when you are a leader, you cannot call yourself a leader if you don't have a follower.
Yeah.
You're just a person. You might call a lot of leaders in the Philippines call themselves a leader, pero wala naman silang follower, leader-leaderan lang sila, ano? So, how can you call yourself a leader? So to me, Even if I just have one follower, I am a leader. So that's my attitude when I was in grade school. At the early level of grade 5, I was actually, what to call that, I think 11 years old. I already started my first organization. So I gathered all the classmates I have that are not performing well academically. And I told them, if you hang out with me, I think you will improve your grade. Ganun ako kaangas when I was in grade school. And my teacher would always ask me, why do you hang out? You're not really that poor in the class. In fact, you can even be first honor, second honor. Sabi ko naman, I don't really care about the honors, you see. So my teacher would always ask me, why do you hang out with the middle level class, even the ones that are not really going to pass if they're not going to perform well? I said, kasi I think they need me more rather than me hanging out with the first honors or the second honors. So that's why I felt the need to create system, and I felt the need that if I have these followers, then I can actually prove a point that with my influence, with my leadership, I can help improve the grades of my classmates. So I think to your question, that's how I handle things. There are a lot of challenges around us. Systems, environment, limitations, and challenges. We just need to look at it in a different way. We just need to look at challenges as opportunities. We just need to look at a situation as an opportunity to lead and an opportunity to learn. At the same time, really an opportunity to help others around you.
Yeah, thank you. That's very insightful, Yusek Giselle. You talked about looking for those opportunities and the Philippines being a developing country. I can imagine the amount of opportunities that you see, no, in terms of using innovation and as you have shared, with that sense of responsibility, with the courage to take risks and the consciousness of the systems that actually come into play, when you think about innovation. But how do you prioritize, Yusek, yung mga kailangan i-innovate versus a nice to have to innovate in terms of as far as your role in the DICT is concerned?
Yeah, that's a good question. I realized listening to myself, and by the way, that's also another skill of mine. Even while I speak, I listen to myself. Probably it's a training that I have in my involvement as a Toastmaster. At the age of 19, I joined Toastmasters International. So I developed the skill of listening, thinking, and speaking. And normally, I think just to also promote this particular organization, which has helped me in my journey, and normally, as individuals, we think that the first thing to do is to be able to have the skill of speaking. But in Toastmasters, our discipline is to have first the skill of listening. After listening, you have to have the skill of thinking, and then eventually speaking. And then that's how you think. That's how you assess yourself if you are ready to lead. And so I said that because I think I kept answering your question by going back to my journey before I was an undersecretary. And I have to explain that this is not like an excuse that I'm saying, but into this position as undersecretary, I'm just probably around 28 months. So around 2 years. I feel that I have so much to learn, and I feel, kumbaga, sa Tagalog, hindi pa ako masyadong nakaporma kasi
Mm.
national government is a totally different thing. And in all humility, there's a really big difference between local government and national government. I say local government because I served as city councilor of Bacolod City for 9 years. And I participated in 6 elections. And the whole process of election is really a unique process altogether. Because in election, it also will define you what kind of politician you are. And so I
Yeah.
also run my election in a different way. I am very consultative. I don't believe in vote buying. People need to vote me because they believe in my what do you call it, in the things that I stand on or I stand for. So to your question, Aoi, um, I think in the DICT now, I'm trying to still understand how national government works. It's a very, very wide and thick forest that I don't want to get lost in.
Yeah.
I mean, as a leader, we need to always be humble and assess ourselves. I mean, there's always the tendency to be caught up in so many things that at the end of the day, you realize instead of you trying to improve the system, it's the system that's trying to change you.
Right.
And every day, that's always what I do as a leader. I look at myself in the mirror, and if I start to not recognize myself anymore, I try to go to my values and try to ask myself, am I changing who I am? Am I losing my core values? So currently, let me do justice to your question and answer you with a present scenario. What I do at the DICT today is somehow bring my own style of leadership. It's scary, actually. I have to be very candid and open up. During my first 12 months in office, it was very, very scary on my part. I felt like, oh, wow, this is such an opportunity. And somebody said earlier, I can just imagine all the opportunities that open up to you. Totally. I mean, I feel like a kid back in grade school. I feel like I'm a kid given 100 sticks. Well, I began my story earlier saying I have one stick in my hand. Now I have 100 sticks. And you can just imagine, I don't know at this point which stick to pick up. And somehow there are situations when I pick up a stick and somebody says, that's my stick. That's not your stick. Okay? And
Mm.
there are also situations where I pick up a stick and I realize, oh, I can do a lot with this, only to find out I cannot. So even the fact of like looking at the responsibilities I hold now, I am not really sure if it is the right stick, if it is the right thing to do. But as I said, I bring in my own arsenal of of equipment that I felt will always help me. Number one is really my skill in open collaboration. So I think going back to my first premise, as a leader, there's always the risk, but the risk is minimized when you know there are people around you that's willing to help. As a leader, you don't need to be up in the pedestal. You need to be there with your people, rolling up your sleeves to work with your people. And you need to tell everyone that this is not my mission. This is your mission. This is our mission all together. And so, even if I am part of the national government now, and I'm just here for less than 3 years, I feel that if I reach out to my network in the last 30 decades, or not 30 decades, 30 years, or 3 decades or so, I feel that I am able to disseminate and make the risk lesser on my part. The second is really, and this time I will use the word innovation. Innovation has always been the most important tool in my personal arsenal as a leader. Why? Because innovation means you're not afraid to use new ways of doing things. And I think as a leader now, that's how I am becoming effective. Even if oftentimes there's always the tendency to commit mistakes, but oftentimes I realize now, almost 3 years in this position, that the national government can, you know, have a breath of fresh air, doing things different. And I'm happy to now see that somehow many of my interventions and programs achieve many good feedback. When people around me, when fellow leaders around me, when my stakeholders say, "Oh, okay, that's right. That's a meron palang strategy na pwedeng gawin that has never been done before, but now you're doing it, and it's not so government. I have actually stumbled upon this term every time I listen to stakeholders and they complain about me that it takes so long, it takes a lot of process, and we all just laugh and say, "Oh, it's so government." So parang it became a sense of acceptance na pag government mapagal. So
Mm.
I don't know how my journey will pan out. I still have 3 years or so to go. And I am trying to disrupt the term, it's so government. I want not only as an undersecretary, but as a Filipino, to see the day that when we talk about government in the Philippines, mabilis, effective,
Mm.
efficient, relevant, targeted, focused, and outcome-based. Gusto ko siyang baguhin yung thinking na it's so government, na mabagal, na mabilis, kasi pwede naman yun eh. And we have proven it one city at a time. And that's another journey I have because I'm also a localist. That's something I have started when I was a city councilor. And it's actually the reason why I was awarded as one of the outstanding women in the nation service in 2016 because of my journey to building ICT Council and cities as small ecosystems to be self-sufficient in terms of attracting jobs and generating investment.
I love that. I love the emphasis also, Yusek, on humility and parang lagi talagang bumabalik dun sa self, no? Bumabalik dun sa who you really are as a person, no? More before you became a leader, you always go back to sino ba ako as a person? Ano ba yung mga values ko? And what kind of brand do I want to leave in this department or in your case in the nation, no, through your brand of leadership. Rip and Richard, thoughts?
Una ka muna, Rep.
Yeah, I mean, it's very interesting. I mean, as Yusek said, innovation is a big word, right? And also self-awareness and so many things. But in my take on innovation, because in technology especially, right, and in information and in communication, Secretary mentioned the word to disrupt, right? And there are many cases that innovation have actually on the far end of the innovation side has caused disruption, right? I mean, Kodak camera became the digital camera, right? Just imagine the disruption. So many other things. Even the doctor syringe before when I was a kid, remember, you would go to the doctor and there was like a glass syringe. And later on, that was
Mm.
changed into plastic, right? And so many other disruptive technologies. Even as we look at the big tech guys, Steve Jobs, who actually put the iPhone together, right? We started with this big case of Motorola, this big
Big phone.
Yes.
and then it became a smaller Nokia, and then you have the flip, right? And then suddenly there's the BlackBerry, and then the smartphone, and there's that part of technology, right? And that part of innovation that is actually, I think, it's more of the meeting the business side of it and the creativity part of the people inside the organization so you can commercialize such products, no? Which I was also wondering. I mean, this department, when you read it, it has actually three big words, right? It has it has information, which is huge, right? Communication, which is also a huge industry, and there's technology. So I was while Yusek was talking, I was just wondering. I mean, with the questions of when say Yusek goes to work, I mean, is there like a top three missions that she would like to achieve in say this year of 2025? That when she's able to do it together with the people in the department, they can say that okay, we've achieved our goal this year, and moreover, maybe after her term in DICT, what would that be? What would that achievement look like that she could say that she has done her part in this DICT environment? Is it about educating those interested in information communication technology, harnessing the genius of the Filipino, being able to say disrupt a global industry? So those are the questions that are running through my mind that I just wanted to point out.
All right. Okay. So I really love how you develop your questions. I mean your point about the inventions, explaining how things evolve. We got used to using simple things before, which are actually simple during the time, and now we have more complex things. And so that brings me to another important word as a leader and also aligned with innovation. And this word is actually questions. Questions. Asking the right questions. Continuing to entertain nagging questions. I think this is one commonality for people who invent things, who innovate. They continuously ask the right questions. If the computers before were as big as a whole room, people who tried to turn and reduce computing power to as small as a cell phone or even a chip must have asked the question, how can we make this portable? How can we make this small? You know? So these types of questions are what leaders have in their minds. They don't stop questioning. They don't stop questioning themselves. So I must have delivered 1,000 speeches or so. And every time I deliver a speech, I would always end up. So people will come to me and, wow, you delivered a good speech. But when I go home, I would always ask myself, what could have I done better? So every time there's always that questioning. Now, I'd like now to give justice to this podcast by answering based on my present lens. When you say innovation, there are actually three other ecosystems or two other ecosystems that needs to be superimposed. And this is now speaking as under my role as the Counselor of the Philippines in the International Telecommunications Union. Secretary Ivan Uy in 2022 assigned me to represent the Philippines in the 48 country council in the ITU. The International Telecommunications Union is the United Nations arm, just like UNICEF, just like World Health, but this time it's all about technologies and ICT. And of course, 194 countries are members of the ITU, but only 48 countries are elected every 4 years to sit in the council. And I sit in that council. And so as an ITU counselor of the Philippines, I imbibe all the teachings of the ITU. I mean, these are all things that the whole world believe in. So one of the learnings in the ITU is that in every country there has to have three important ecosystems: the innovation ecosystem, the entrepreneurial ecosystem, and the technology ecosystem. And all these three has to work together in order to bring about a very digitally transformed and innovative country. And let's focus on the innovation ecosystem because we're talking and very interested here in the innovation ecosystem. In the innovation ecosystem, there has to be 6 to 7 pillars that need to be in place. You have people, you have markets, you have infrastructure, you have systems and policies, strategies, and the most important thing is, and what Richard is doing with the project, culture. Even an innovation ecosystem, the catch-all pillar should always be culture. And why do I say that? Because everything I've shared today is really about my background as a person. I was given by my parents, even at a young age, a very big responsibility to take care of my siblings. I was always asked to do things that a 6-year-old or a 7-year-old might not traditionally know how to do. But I had to know how to do it on my own. So kung titignan mo talaga, when I was growing up, I would always feel that I'm deprived. Buti pa yung ibang bata, nakakalaro, ako hindi. Pero wala eh. I am thankful of all the things I have undergone because it prepared me to this day. Now, to directly answer the question of Ripp. So, you are very right in saying that the three words that is attached to the name of my department, our department, the department that I pushed for in terms of creation, are very important words. Information, communications, and technology. And all three need to be seamless. Information is not enough. That's what I'm always telling my team. And that's what I'm always telling the people around me. Information without use, without purpose, just lying around, not analyzed, not shared, doesn't have any value. You need to have the opportunity to communicate this because data can influence policy, data can influence a lot of decisions in government. Communication is important. Now, communication is another big word because there's no one size fits all in terms of communication. Now we have a podcast, and I'm glad that I'm reaching a different dimension of people through this podcast. But I also need to go to the grassroots. As a department, I also need to meet with mayors, with governors, and that's why many people always ask, why is USEC Jocelle going around the country? Because I want this grassroots leader to also know what the ICT is doing and what are the opportunities for them. With or without the ICT, they must know what are the international opportunities for them. Where can jobs be found? Where can investments be generated? And so the catch-all of information and communications is technology. And technology should be able to harness information and communication. So that's how I perceive our department. Now, finally, to your question, which is very inspiring, parang napaisip ako ngayon, after DICT, which is not really far from now, it's just 3 years from now. By 2028, and I thank God, and of course, the President of the Philippines, to have given me this appointment until 2028, most especially Secretary Ivan Uy, who entrusted me with this position. So, what do I want to see? I want to have a different meaning for information and communication technology. And I always share this in my talk. I should stand for innovation. Information should translate to innovation. Information should not remain as information. Information should become the basis of more innovation. So I is innovation. I want to see a country where innovation is seamless across all levels in different sectors. Not only in government, but mostly in government, but also in the private sector, even in the academia, which is very important. C for me is actually collaboration or convergence. I believe that we need to get our acts together. The problem in this country is everyone are just basically doing what they need to do on a day-to-day basis. So my role, and a lot of people don't understand that, is to try to paint a bigger picture. Kaya ang ginagawa ko sa DICT ngayon is to work with other departments. I don't mind collaborating with the Department of Trade and Industry, with the Department of Science and Technology, with all other departments. Yung ina-avoid ko lang yung mga department na talagang very technical na hindi ko na kaya. No? Like probably, agrarian reform, although I can also learn that and I can also talk experts in that area. But ang sinasabi ko is, we need to put together how we look at the whole country. Na buo, hindi yung watak-watak. So collaboration is important. Finally, the team. I would like to translate and see the day where team for technology is actually also going to mean transformation. At the end of the day, we are here as leaders because we want to transform the country. And so by 2028, I want to be able to look back at my 6 years at the DICT as having that opportunity to help in the transformation of government, transformation of different sectors, and transformation of the whole of the country. So that's my goal.
Sounds like a big.
Very, very, very inspiring.
Yeah. Can I have a follow-up question on that? I mean, I was curious when you mentioned about DTI, DST. With regards to the Department of Education, where does DICT and DepEd meet?
Secretary Angara and Secretary Tito, I know for a fact, personally, are really innovators. They want to change how things are being done. And I've been hearing a lot of good news, feedback from the stakeholders of these two departments. So as of now, we're still trying to build some sort of, partnership or collaboration uh, within the national government. I'm sorry, I don't want to preempt our Secretary Ivan Goy. He is the leader of our department. But suffice it to say that in so far as my lens as an innovator, as a leader, nag-share kami ng discussion. In fact, recently, the World Economic Forum released its Future of Jobs report for 2025.
Yeah.
And I shared with them my analysis. In the 300-page or so report, the Philippines was mentioned 10 times. You see? So parang tabang puso na the Philippines was mentioned 10 times and everything was like very positive. And two of those mentions highlighted actually the fact that public education now is gaining a lot of prioritization insofar as the Philippine government is concerned. So parang sinabi ko kay Secretary Sani, oh, congratulations, ang ganda nito, no? Then I also shared with Secretary Kiko the several other mentions of the Philippines, which talks about how how 40% of the jobs around the world will be disrupted in 2030. And
Right.
hindi yun hindi yun matagal pa from now,
Yeah.
2030 is around the corner.
It's
And you
5 years
can
from now.
and you can just imagine, like, 40% of all the jobs that we know now will not be existing in just a matter of 5 years. And in different degrees, nakikita natin na ang sabi nila, in this country, you need to upskill. In this country, you need to upskill. So, in the case of the Philippines, mataas tayo sa general average. So, the general average is 40 to around 50, you need to upskill. In the Philippines, it's almost 68%. You need to upskill. No? It's almost 68% or around that number. But there's always a good news in my analysis. The good news is in the Philippines, compared to other countries, the private sector is actually working harder than the government. In short, captured in the World Economic Forum Jobs of the Future report is the fact that in the Philippines, 60 to 70% of our enterprise are doing their own upskilling program. Sa totoo lang, medyo nahiya din ako eh. Kasi parang inisip ko, dapat mas mabilis yung intervention ng government. Pero yun na nga eh, this proves the point now, and to your goal in the GIS project, in all the things that you're doing, Richard, and everyone here, this proves the fact that the Philippines is not a lost case. You know why? You have a private sector that's several times more active than the private sector in other countries. Maybe it's born out of the thinking na parang, wag na tayo maghintay sa gobyerno. Kahit pa paano pala, may positive side din yun. Kasi
Yeah.
ang attitude ng private sector, wag na tayo maghintay sa gobyerno. And that's what I always also say. I mean, I, from the DICT, I'm here, but don't wait for me, especially for the city and the province. The provinces and the cities, you are small little governments in your own right, in your own regions. So don't wait. And then i-add ko lang, no? The World Economic Forum report, it's also stated there that in the Philippines, we have one of the highest adoption of AI among business sector.
Oh.
So kaya there's the use case now. bilisan natin yung pag-upskilling in terms of AI kasi may papupuntahan siya. Because a lot of our enterprises are now integrating and adopting AI. So I think this new report really validates a lot of my point. Yung parang for many months, I've been saying things parang, sinasabi lang yan ni Yusek Giselle or maybe some of her sources. But now it's the World Economic
Ngayon, meron ng report, right?
meron ng basis, meron ng basihan. And the best thing about is that we're not a slow mover in the ASEAN. Um ang pinaka claim to fame natin actually now in ASEAN and even in the world is that we have a very big workforce which is around 57 million, and majority of that workforce is in their 24 to 27
Young, yeah.
years. So super ang tawag nga sa atin, wow, a super young nation. So ano bang hinihintay natin? Let's ensure that the super young workforce is embodying, is equipped with the innovation mindset, with the growth mindset, with the skills that are needed for the future of jobs.
Thank you, Yusek Giselle. In Filipino terms, parang siksik liglig nag-uumapaw itong podcast na to. Thank you so much for sharing all your insights, all that update from the World Economic Forum. Before we wrap up, Richard, do you have any thoughts that you'd like to share with us?
No, I'm just really, really, very, like you said, overwhelmed with all the information, and I'm just really pleased that Yusek Giselle really share the vision that we have for Filipinos.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the whole reason why I came back to the Philippines to I really believe that we have a lot of opportunities, a lot of possibilities, right? And we continue to believe that, and to hear it from someone that really shared the vision of believing in Filipinos is very heartwarming. So thank you.
Yeah, and before we let you go, Yusek Giselle, we have just a couple of fun questions for you, if it's okay. So we ask this to our guests, before we wrap up. So the first of three questions is, if you could have dinner with any historical figure, who would it be and why?
Historical, so meaning not alive
Not
anymore.
alive anymore.
First is Confucius.
Mm.
His story is very inspiring. All his writings, all his thinking never came out except after 300 years when somebody dug up all his teachings. So I want to understand his thoughts. Second is, I want to also have dinner with Mahatma Gandhi. I am following his footsteps always. He is always my consolation every time I lost an election. Because he is the he is the inspiration behind a leader without position. So parang it has always been my lifelong journey to be a leader with or without position. I realized that I joined 6 elections, I lost in 3, I won in 3. And the 3 times that I lost, I never had any experience of not having followers, even when I did not have a position. And again, speaking of humility, it was so humbling for me to still be consulted by leaders who have positions even when I'm no longer in the position to do so. I mean, to as a politician. And the third would be, I want to have dinner, not only dinner, probably a month of vacation with my mom. Kasi I did not really get to know her. She died when I was just 9 years old. And I think she's a very strong lady. I got a lot of my fire from her. So, yun. Kaya nainggit ako. I always tell my friends, if your mom is still alive, I mean, her, kasi I never got the chance to talk to my mom. I was just 9 years old. And, if I may just share this story, when I was in school, when she was alive for up to my grade 3, she would always bring me to school. And she would
Mm.
always sit outside. And I would always tell her, Mom, parang nakakahiya. Ayoko, parang ayoko may mom ako sa school. I'm a big
Uh-uh.
now. I'm a big girl now. So I always tell her to go home. So parang nanghinayang ako, no? Na parang that was also a time when your mom always brings you to school.
Yeah.
Ngayon, these are already busy people, you know. So that's it. That's my third person.
Thank you, Yusek. Next question. What's one book or movie that has significantly influenced your leadership style?
There are several books. It depends on the field. On a personal basis, of course, Gone with the Wind.
I wasn't expecting that.
Grabe, grabe. As in, kaya nga naisip ko palagi na parang ang mukha ng husband ko ngayon ay parang si Clark Gable.
Now
Diba?
I want to meet him.
Yeah. He's the type, actually. Yung parang, frankly, my dear, I don't give a damn. Parang ganun. Parang he's the
Mm-mm.
type na parang kahit anong, alam ko, weird ni Scarlett O'Hara, he's really just, nonchalant. Ganun. And I like that she was a leader. Scarlett O'Hara was a leader. And the most historical for me was when he declared in one of the scenes in Gone with the Wind, I will never go hungry again. Kasi at one point in time when my mother died, my father lost his job. So we became, from middle class, we became lower middle class. No? So, napakahirap nun kasi parang middle class ka tapos bigla kang walang baon sa
Mm.
school. Alam mo yon. So I would usually pretend na, hindi pa ako gutom. And my classmates would go to the canteen. Pero ako talaga walang baon. I just say, hindi pa ako.
Mm.
So parang yon, very, very vivid yon sa akin. Sabi ni Scarlett O'Hara, I will never go hungry again. So Scarlett O'Hara, I think for the book readers and for the people who have ideologies, medyo hindi sila sold out when I say Ayn Rand, the books of Ayn Rand. So the books of Ayn Rand are all about individualism. So all about saying that I have this, I can produce this, and government just takes it away. And not giving premium to the creators, to the artists.
Mm.
Kaya ako, even as a leader, I would always use things that belong to somebody with an attribution. So,
Mm.
I collaborate with artists, sasabihin ko, I will use your artwork, pero I will put here, designed by Ripp, or designed by Richard. And the kids will go, hindi na counselor, hindi na Yusek. Hindi, sabi ko, hindi. This is my way of spotlighting you. And so, that's the reason why I get a lot of traction from young people saying, use my work, use my artwork, kasi I always give credit where credit
Promote, yeah.
due from the Ayn Rand thing. And finally, of course, I'm glued to Paulo Coelho, the Warrior of Light.
Mm.
Yeah.
I love the list. I need to reread Gone with the Wind now. Kasi minention mo na.
Moving
And
na,
finally,
moving na. You can
Yeah, there's the famous line that Rhett said, right? That but you also mentioned.
yeah, frankly, my dear. Okay, and finally, if you have to describe your leadership philosophy in one word lang, Yusek, ano kaya yung gagamitin mong word?
You wouldn't expect me saying this, but actually, I have so many fellowships, and one of the fellowships that really changed my life in a way is my Haggai Institute, my Haggai Leadership Institute by Pastor John Haggai. So we were trained for evangelism in the marketplace. Okay. So I think in one word, I would have to say Christ-centered. Gusto kong gamitin yun. Kasi when I say Christ-centered, it keeps me humble. It keeps me knowing that leadership is a sacrifice. It's not a reward.
Mm.
So maybe I will use that. Although of course I have other words for it. But just to end the discussion in a very positive note. Kasi leadership is a very lonely place.
Mm.
Dependent na. So, but when you have faith, when you believe that you have a higher mission in life, parang you always tell yourself, okay na to. It's enough sacrifice. I mean, other leaders are more persecuted than me and other, and more, there's more that are asked of them. Ako naman konting ano lang naman, inconvenience or maybe challenges or sacrifice. So it's a good thing.
Yeah. Thanks, Yusek Giselle. That reminds me of the Greek or the etymology of leadership, which is late, which means to die, to go or to die. And yeah, so true. And thank you for highlighting the importance of servant leadership, which is something that the Geese Project really is promoting. Rip and Richard, any last thoughts? Rip first.
Well, I guess mine is more of a prayer, because as Yusek said, there's a young generation, right? And in fact, when you look at the median age of the Philippines, it's 25 years old. So there's really a lot of young, aspiring students out there. And I guess this pool of knowledge, this pool of wealth of the Filipino just needs good leaders for them to be guided. Given opportunities like the ICT does, they make these projects more available, or they create awareness. And I hope that the ICT, and I also mentioned it part of education, because I think it's very crucial that these two departments are able to collaborate in order to give better chances to these students who, I guess, just needs to be guided or made more aware or be more exposed to technology. And this, they say it's like the fourth stage of the industrial age, right? We're in a digital age. And just like any industry, like the BPO, where we're very successful, this opportunities for technology hopefully can also be given to this younger generation for the betterment of the Filipino.
Thank you
I
so much, Rip.
just
Richard?
last word for me. I mean, Yusek Giselle mentioned Mahatma Gandhi, and we use this all the time about his most famous quote, which is "Be the change that you want to see." Right? We always close our webinars with that before, and I think it's very inspirational. And I think it captures the essence of what we're trying to do here. Thank you
All
for
right.
gracing your presence.
Thank you so much again, Yusek Giselle, and thank you to my co-hosts, Rip and Richard. This, once again, is the Lead Goose Podcast, Navigating Leadership in the Philippines. Bye.
Bye.